take this American history path, starting with Jamestown, next going to Colonial Williamsburg, and ending with Yorktown. That kind of gives you the progress of the American story, straight from the Virginia colony all the way up to the American Revolution. And each section builds upon that history, so you have a greater understanding going to the next location. Today we are at Jamestown Settlement. Now this is the first English settlement in the New World, founded in 1607. As you can see from behind me, this is a Native American reenactment that you get to kind of see what the settlers saw when they first got here. Here you see a recreation of some of the ships that brought the settlers over from England to Jamestown. Behind me you'll see the Susan Constant. Now we're going to take a step aboard and we're going to see what it'd be like to live 4 months aboard these wonderful vessels. Arr. Put her in the brink with the captain's daughter, put him in the brink with the captain's daughter, put him in the brink with the captain's daughter, early in the morn. It's time to man the cannons. At least they had a great view. Jamestown Settlement is kind of set up into 2 distinct areas. You have first your outdoor exhibits, the settlement of the fort and the ships that we were looking at. It is a recreation of what this original settlement looked like. And as you go through the fort itself, there'll be different tradesmen and craftsmen who are showing you how they created different things, soldiers showing you how they fired their guns. And all of these interpreters are so well versed in their history. I challenge you to give them a question that they can't answer for you. You can tell that they just immerse themselves in this and have the spirit of Jamestown within them to be able to educate everybody that comes through here. Now as you come out of the fort area, you'll be going back into the visitor center, and that's where you're going to find your gallery section. It's nicely air conditioned, there aren't as many bugs in there, and it kind of gives you that timeline of everything that went on during this period. It tells you about the women's role, tells the story of Pocahontas, the Bacon Rebellion, and some wonderful films and interactions within there that are kind of multifaceted. You know, the smoke rolling up from the movie screen that keeps the kids kind of enticed and enjoying learning about this history. We are at Colonial Williamsburg. Now we just checked in and purchased our one-day tickets at the Visitor Center. The Visitor Center has all kinds of different wall prints that tell you, kind of gets you a little bit of the background of Colonial Williamsburg. There's a wonderful diorama of the landscape of what the village plot originally looked like. And then you have a choice as you're getting on your way to the village itself. You can either hop aboard a bus. They do have the free bus shuttle that you can do a hop on, hop off throughout your day if you're not much of a walker. But if you really want to get the right mindset and to really step back in time, I really encourage you to take the trail that they have to get there. I mean, if you look at these beautiful woods, see this wonderful old colonial architecture, there's a windmill that's back there behind me. It just gets you in the right frame of mind for what you're going to see when you reach the end of this trail. So that would be my suggestion. If you're not opposed to walking, take this gorgeous trail, immerse yourself, get ready for a wonderful experience. Are you ready? Are you with me? Let's go. We're going to start taking a little tour of the Governor's Palace. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with what is Colonial Williamsburg, Williamsburg was the original capital of the Virginia colony. So at this time, when this was all built, this was under the crown. And a symbol of that is right behind me. If you look at the top of this gate, you will see that there is a lion on one side and a unicorn on the other. The lion is the Lion of England, the unicorn is for Scotland. We just finished touring the Governor's Palace, and a palace it was indeed. For those of you that have been overseas and into England, you'll see that entry foyer with wonderful weaponry all over the walls. And then you step into the most beautiful and ornate, bright colored rooms, which was really surprising to me. So make sure that you put this one on your list when you visit Williamsburg.
What is so special about Colonial Williamsburg? It is where history comes to life. And I have said many a times that all of the answers to the future can be found in the past if we simply study our history. And everywhere you look, madame, in Williamsburg is history. Whether it be the old Capitol building, where the representative government was going to occur, whether it be Jamestown, 9 miles down the road, where the first English lasting settlement was, or whether it be 12 miles in that direction at the great Champ de Bataille or battlefield at Yorktown, where victory was was assured and would pave the way for American independence. So Williamsburg, and Colonial Williamsburg more specifically, is where history will come to life, that where you can become a better citizen of the future by learning from the past.
Bravo! Did you get that, folks? Well, we've reached the end of today's journey, so we're going to end where we started, right here at the Visitor Center for Colonial Williamsburg. This is the spot you're going to go through here, and you'll buy your tickets, and you'll also get to see some films, look at the artifacts, and before you head off to the town area and see the wonderful things that we saw today. So just remember, think like my new BFF, the Marquis de Lafayette, and history comes alive here at Colonial Williamsburg. You don't want to miss it. It's a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful day out amongst nature and just getting back to the basic joys of life. We are in Yorktown. We are at the Museum of the American Revolution. We're going to learn about the birth of our nation and the road that led us here. We're going to learn about the Battle of Yorktown as well. So let's get together and let's go out and learn something. Here we are in front of the Memorial Victory Monument in Yorktown. Now, this was erected in the 1880s to commemorate the fall of the British Empire and the Battle of Yorktown and the Siege of Yorktown. As you can see up at the top, there is a statue that looks a lot like one you've probably seen before with her hand upraised. This is another Lady Liberty statue that we have up here with her hands outright. A fun fact we learned the other night when we were on our sailing schooner was that in 1942, a striking of lightning actually decapitated poor Lady Liberty up there, but she did, after the World War II, had her head put back on, and she now has a lightning rod on the top. Right now, we are going to go and take a look at the battlefield sites. This is part of the National Park Service, so you'll want to make sure that you register when you come in, and we're going to be following along this little map and following this road along to see the different locations for the siege, the encampments, and to get a better idea of how this whole process worked for this pinnacle battle that occurred in the Revolutionary War. Right now we are on the site of the Battle of Yorktown. Now, to give you a little bit of an idea of what that actually was, that was when George Washington came down from New York and he came up against Cornwallis, who was with the British troops here in Yorktown. Now, this was kind of his last-ditch effort to try to save us in the American Revolution and kind of the last effort to win this thing. And so he and his troops came down. They took two of the redoubts that were looking over Yorktown and protecting that area where Cornwallis had his troops. George Washington met up with the French and they put Yorktown under siege. Now, this behind me is the second siege line. They came up, they started firing their cannons to kind of let them know that we were here. Cornwallis went to bed in October, woke up in the morning, and here were the cannons directly at his back door. So this line is to kind of show where the soldiers were, how they overlooked the Yorktown area, and what Cornwallis saw when he awoke that morning. This is redoubt number 10. Now, a redoubt is a fortress. There was a redoubt number 9 and number 10. There were fortresses that were put in place to defend Yorktown, where Cornwallis was. This one is very important into this story because this is where Alexander Hamilton, you'll recognize his name from a musical, under the orders of Marquis de Lafayette, our good friend Marquis de Lafayette, sent him up this way with the light infantry. As they came up, they had affixed bayonets. They did not have their weapons loaded because they didn't want to risk somebody accidentally firing and letting the British know that they were on their way. And once they got up here, after 10 minutes of hand-to-hand combat, Alexander Hamilton and the light infantry took redoubt number 10. So this was a huge accomplishment. This is what helped us win over the Battle of Yorktown. This helped us to end the siege, which brought an abrupt end to the Revolutionary War skirmishes. And although it took 2 years for the treaty in Paris to be signed, this was pretty much the end for the British in this area of the United States. Again, on that second siege line, you can see why it was so important for General Washington to get the second siege line, to get these redoubts both to fall so that they can move their guns forward. And Cornwallis woke up to this in his face when he woke up in the morning. And this marks the end of our stay here in Yorktown, a place that if you're a history buff, you've got to come to. This marks the end of the Revolutionary War, but the beginning of the American experience. Remember what we said, start with Jamestown, go to Williamsburg, then end with Yorktown. That way you're building on that history and you've got that continuous storyline all the way through, and then you can fully appreciate what our founding fathers went through and all the pride that we have to be in this great nation.